Welcome everyone to this Force Friday. Today we are going to discuss anatomy. And I do want to preface this today with, I don't think anatomy is where you should start to learn how to draw. This is something that comes further down the road. In mentorship at drawingforce.com, Swami Mattesi and I very often get students who come in and show us their work, and they have sketchbooks filled with like anatomy drawings, but they're not good drawings because they don't know how to draw, yet they're drawing anatomy, right? And my kind of joke to response to that is, are you here to learn how to draw, or are you trying to be a doctor? Like, which thing is going on here? So there's no reason to really get too mired and involved in the details of anatomy until you learn how to draw, right? You need to know how to draw in order to draw anatomy. So the how-to part comes before the anatomy itself. That's just a subject, right? Just another subject, right? It's an important one, of course, because we're mostly talking about the body, but not the first one by any means, right? So if you're out there right now today and you're watching and you're just at the beginning of your drawing journey and you're going into anatomy, stop, right? There are so many other things you need to learn to do, and you'll probably start recognizing that based on what the three of us are doing today, right? To have the drawing skill that it takes to just draw the things we're going to draw, and then still anatomy is in addition to that, right? So that's it, right? So we're going to do an overview today. We're basically going to do an overview of anatomy and how does like force, form, and shape work with that overview. And we're going to pick some muscles of the body just to kind of specify down in one region to show you how these different ideas start to work, right? Because the goal of today is to draw anatomy that functions, right? The other challenge out there is there's a lot of anatomy courses on how to draw anatomy, but that's literally what they are. It's like how to draw the anatomy. Here's this shape muscle, like this is what it looks like, and it's attached here and here. But there's so much more to it. We want your anatomy to be forceful, right? To be able to force it and have some dynamism in your drawings, right? Even with that level of detail. So let's do it, right? So let's say, first of all, hello to our other two force instructors. How's it going, Swanley?
Yeah, good. Ready to do some heavy lifting with anatomy today.
Awesome. And how about you, Mr. Matunja?
Doing good. Hope you have all warmed up your muscles, today.
That's right. We should all have to do like 10 push-ups or something before we start today's session. All right. So, it's funny. I wasn't going to bring this up, but now that we talk about push-ups, I guess my first introduction to anatomy was being a teenager, and obviously having to work out. It seems like what every boy teen's got to do, right? So, and I used to work out like crazy, quite honestly. I had a gym in my basement in my parents' house, and I used to go to, in my senior year, I went to a gym like religiously. I would go 4 to 5 days a week with me and some friends in my senior year of high school. And that helped me learn, that you start out of your own curiosity for yourself, you start to learn about the different muscles on the body and how they function, right? If you have anywhere near as a good trainer, you've got somebody who's telling you how these muscles actually work. And that was, again, my first intro, and probably for a bunch of you as well. So it's not like, I guess the joke in a sense here is, artists aren't typically thought of as like the most physically fit people in the world, right? It's not like we're all muscle bound artists. That's not the usual picture of an artist, but it's still good to know your own body, right? And maybe this will inspire some of you to exercise. I think it is cool if you are somewhat fit and that you're bringing that experience to the act of drawing anatomy. I think that's awesome, And it's also why I think it's great to be drawing the human body, because we have our own bodies, and and force is a very big part of that. In drawing classes, very often I would have students take on the pose of the model, right? And I think that's a great idea as well, right? To go and do that. So, this is maybe an opportunity to inspire you to go exercise, go work out, right? All right, so let's get back to Photoshop and take a look at what's going on here. So before we get started, I had a quick note. I just got an email today from my publisher. They sell the books at a website called routledge.com. there's 20% off right now on the animal drawing book, right? So if you're interested, you can see it's almost $10 off, right? $9 off. So it's usually in the 40s. Yeah, it's $45 usually the book. It's only going for 35 right now. So if you're interested, go to rootledge.com. If you just type in the search bar, you know, force animal drawing or my name, you'll find the book. Okay. So good time to buy it right now. Those of you that were lucky enough to go to CTN, I had hardcover books, which you could see go for 120. I was selling them for like 40 or 45. So some of you were very lucky to walk away with, yeah, some hardcover books at paperback price, right? So go check it out. Today, by the way, everything I'm going to be sharing with you is in the Force Anatomy book, right? And I think I put the link to that in the description, if I'm not mistaken. It's probably pointed towards the Rootledge website, or if you go there to check out the animal drawing book, just write in Force Anatomy, right? And they have the book there as well. It's also on Amazon, so there's plenty of places you could buy it. So let's talk about anatomy. So these images, like I said, they're from the Force Anatomy book. I'm going to start with the skeleton really briefly here. The skeleton in general does not have much force. It's literally a skeleton. We talk about the term skeleton metaphorically and literally, right? Metaphorically, it's a skeleton in that it's what holds up everything in the body. It's like scaffolding, right? And yet we also have the human skeleton, right? And to me, it's like the really true nouns of the human body, because we want to draw muscles today and we want to activate those muscles, right? Just like an exercise. We want to understand how muscles get well, not how they get activated, but what they do when they get activated. I'm not going to go into like, you know, neurons and the whole nerve system of the body or any of that today. But what we want to focus on is like, this is our structure, right? And this is good to know, you know. Do you need to know this at the very beginning of your drawing experience? No. Okay, again, don't think, oh my God, I want to be an artist. I got to draw the human figure. I've got to learn the skeleton. Okay, you do not need to learn the skeleton at the beginning of force drawing. Okay, you just need to start seeing the body and understanding how things are flowing, right? This comes later. This is a specificity, right? So is it good to know? Yes, but like I said, you don't need it at the start. What you will recognize, I'm going to call out here really quickly, is there is a pattern that starts to happen here with the body. You know, you basically go from like hard to soft, to hard to soft, to hard to soft, to hard to soft, to hard and potentially soft, right? And what I mean by that is you have these structures, and then structures are connected by muscle. And there's muscle on those structures, of course. But it's mostly like, hey, I have an object, and then I have like a flexible area in between that object to the next object. So you have, you know, the skull, you got the rib cage, and you have the pelvis, right? You got these three major like hard structures going on, right? And the soft regions are in between, right? So a lot of muscle in those soft regions. There's muscle on top of the harder ones, like I said before, but a lot of muscles in the soft regions to help these bigger objects, you know, move, right? So good thing to be aware of, you know, it's like, there's a reason you have the core, you know, this whole area right here and all these muscles here, because they're connecting the rib cage and the pelvis, right? And it's what allows you to create torque in your, you know, in your upper body. So as we go down, we've got these longer areas, right? Like the legs. This is the femur, the leg bone, the upper leg bone, and muscles are stretched over these long distances, right? And they're connecting from joint to joint. So in a way, I sometimes think of the skull, the rib cage, and the pelvis as like big joints, right? So there's like the head, and then you have the rib cage as two like joints, and the soft muscle is like the neck, right? Connecting these two big structures, right? And then again, you'll get soft because you get the long muscles in the lower legs, and then, you know, you get the ankles, and then you have the feet. Same thing with the arms, right? You go from joint to joint to joint. So the soft is in the middle, the hard is at the joints, right? So there's this pattern, right, of how things happen. Now, along with those joints, which are super important, is talking about the function of them. You can see there's many different types of joints that can be found in the human body. There's this ellipsoid, there's pivot, the saddle, the ball and socket, and the hinge. Most of us are pretty aware of like ball and socket joints. and hinge joints. Like a hinge joint would be your elbow. The ball and socket would be your shoulder or your pelvis, right? Then there's weird joints like the collarbone, right? Where it's a little bit more of like saddle or ellipsoid on like one shape is just kind of rubbing into another shape a little bit to give it a little bit of movement, but it's not as open-ended as like a ball and socket joint, right? Hinge joint, again, would be your knee or your elbow, right? So you just want to be aware of there's different function. The blue arrows here are showing what the directions are for that joint, right? Let's see, let's keep moving on here. And again, feel free to type in any questions in the toolbar, not the toolbar, in the chat. So, okay, there it goes. My Photoshop's acting very strange. New layer. So there's two other things anatomically I want you to be aware of. One is ligaments, right? So when I was writing the anatomy book, man, I just had the toughest time like remembering the separation between ligaments and tendons. So I started realizing, you know, ligaments, ligament is actually like tape in the body. So I just started calling it to myself. I started calling it ligatape. I think I actually even mentioned this in the book. And that would help me remember, okay, this is a ligament, right? Ligaments are like tape that wrap around joints to make sure that it's not only reliant on your muscles and tendons to actually keep these areas of your body connected, right? So they need to be more taped up, right? So ligaments do that job. The other very important piece to anatomy is the tendon. And tendons are at the ends of your muscles, right? Now, when it comes to the ends of muscles, there's two terms that you may have heard of before. And that is origins and insertion points, right? Origin and insertion. So the origin is typically where the muscle inserts into the bone near its start, where it's not really doing its function. It's really like it's attached to the initial bone itself. And the insertion point is where the muscle will cross over a joint into the following bone. Now, you may have seen this on skulls, and if you look at human anatomy enough, to me, what's crazy impressive, well, here, we can use this illustration here, is that you'll see on your bone that there's like these little divots, right? You might have like a little shadow in here, it's like a little divot. And that's what our muscle like connects into. It looks like it's barely connecting into anything, right? But it's connecting into these like little divots in the bones, and it's stuck in there. And that's why sometimes you can, tear a muscle literally from the tendon pointing at the bone and tear it out of the bone, right? And then they have to do surgery on connecting that. You can also tear a muscle, honestly, also, right? Anyway, so you have these origins and insertion points. Now, why is this important? This is important because not so much in the naming convention and all this, it's not like I would say, you know what, you need to pass the test, you need to know every muscle's like origin, insertion, or I should say the labeling of those two things. I don't care so much about that. I think what does matter or helps quite a bit is to know where those beginnings and ends are. I think that helps. I think it helps to know, because you don't want to say, let's say this is the bicep, right? Which is what I intended this to be. So this is the upper arm and the lower arm, right? Upper arm and lower arm, right? So I don't want to think, hey, the bicep goes from here to here, all right? Like that doesn't make much sense. First of all, we all know it doesn't look like that, right? The bicep feels like it's right up against the bones of the arm, right? And that changes the function of it too, right? Like we're talking about pulley systems and levers and fulcrums, right? There's a lot of physics involved in how the body, how it works, right? So I think it's important to get a sense of like where things begin and where they end. What bones are they connected to? Now, that leads me to the first note about function. How does all this stuff work, right? So the way it works, and this isn't, well, let me put this out there and then I'll kind of rectify it a little bit. The vast majority of the body works in a very simple manner. And that is, you have a muscle and you have a tendon attached to a bone. The muscle will move over a joint. So here is a joint. This joint is the elbow, right? Is the elbow joint. Okay. And because it moves over that joint, when the muscle contracts, when it gets shorter, right? When it squashes, it's going to make the two bones move, right? So up here we have the humerus. By the way, the way to remember this, the way I always remember that's the humerus, is because of the funny bone, right? The quote unquote funny bone in the elbow. So that always makes me remember, that's humerus, all right? I need all these tricks to help me with my memory. And down here you have the ulna and you have the radius, right? So, you know, the bicep needs to cross over this joint, right? It needs to cross over that joint. If I were to say, here's the humerus bone, here, just as an example, let's say here's the humerus, and I said, here's the bicep, and I made it attached with the tendon here, and then I attached it here, and I said, well, here's the bicep muscle, right? This shape right here, right? What is it doing? It's not doing anything, all right? It doesn't have the ability to function at all because it's just going to sit there in that state. There's nothing there that's going to make it squash or stretch or contract or stretch, right? It has no function. So to make this as blatant as I can, you've got to know how a muscle crosses a joint. That is its job. It needs to contract in order to bring bones together or apart to make your body move, right? The fact that I'm waving my hands all over the place is my bicep or my tricep either relaxing or contracting and moving my arms around and moving my hands around, right? And it's because those muscles are going over joints, okay? So very, very important. If you want to get more maniacal about anatomy, feel free to learn all the origin and insertion points and know which one's the origin, which is the insertion. Before that, I would just say at least know how the muscles connect to those different parts of the body, okay? All right, any questions on any of these things, guys, that we got yet? Doesn't look like it. I'm getting questions about software and stuff. Any anatomy questions? Doesn't look like it, right? Looks like we're doing okay. Okay, so ligaments, tendons, origins and insertions, muscles move over joints. Oh, the thing I wanted to rectify is a vast majority, like 95% of the body is a muscle moving over one joint. I don't even remember where this is, but I know there are particular places in the body where a muscle can move over more than one joint, but it's super, super rare, okay? Most of the time it's just going over one joint itself, and it's very simply just bringing bones apart or together, okay? Okay, so let's get past that. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to discuss the traps, the trapezius, right? So Swenley and Mrityunjay are going to dig into this a little more deeply. What I wanted to share with you today is just on my end, like, how does the origin insertion situation work here, right? So what you want to be aware is of here, let's kind of white this out because it seems like we're talking about the head as well, and we're not. New layer. All right, so I'm going to just tone this back here a little bit. So the trapezius, it's a huge muscle, and it goes on both sides of your spine. But let's talk about where it connects, right? So it connects at the base of the skull, right here in red, okay? And it goes down the spine, right? Like so, all the way down your back. It kind of ends typically right around, or this is, I even think is a touch long. I would say maybe I would shorten this up a little bit. Nowadays, I would shorten this up a little higher than maybe the end of the rib cage, right? But keep in mind, it goes all the way down the spine of the human body and T sections up here at the base of your skull, right? Now, on the back, the only other place it then finally connects to is the top of the scapula, which is right here. Okay, so the scapula is this very fancy bone that lives in here like this, and it's got a ball and socket joint here, and then the bone goes over here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The collarbone connects to it. And the bone actually does continue like this up and over the top, but you never see this part because the trapezius are covering it, right? So I'm not even going to worry about that top section. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that. It's like this. So I'm going to try to keep the red only for where the muscle's connected to bone. So it's like that, okay? So now, think about this. It's like, how is this working, right? If we think about the muscle connecting, let's say here and here, and it shortens, right? So I'm going to draw arrows pointing towards each other. What would happen there, right? Think about the bones. Well, this would help you start to shrug, right? This would help you start to bring your shoulder up towards your ears, right? Because you're pulling up, right? You're shortening the traps, right? You think about the muscle over here, right? Let's say we want to contract here and here. That's going to pull the scapula closer towards the center of your back. Same over here, right? If this contracts this way, that's also helping you pull your scapula closer to your spine and down, right? So as complicated as anatomy looks when you're drawing it, its function is actually pretty damn simple. We can look at anything and just go, okay, it begins and ends here. Here's the origin, here's the insertion. And understanding that by it getting shorter, it's moving bones, then you understand how the body works, right? So look at this, right? We're not doing the face today, but let's look at the face real quickly. It's like, if you look at all the muscles here on the face and you start understanding contraction, it's like, oh, okay, I understand how this works. There's two big bones here, right? I know that the skull is made of numerous bones that, you know, get seamed together, but let's just say there's the cap of the skull and there's the jaw, okay? So those are like the two big ones, right? Two big structures, just to simplify, right? So we got number one and we got number two. And the change in them is right here, right? Cross your teeth and then your jaw, and it's like this, right? So if you start looking at the bones, right, it's like, how is this stuff working? Well, you know, you have some muscle that will cross over. You can't see it in this drawing too well, like the masseter that's going to be over here. That really helps you chew, right? You got these weird muscles around your eyes and your mouth, right? Because they're really connecting from here to here. So as it contracts, it's what helps you like start to squint and close your eyes and your eyelids. You have it around your mouth, right? Which allows the combination of this muscle here getting shorter is what pulls your lips closer together. And then yet you have these muscles over here that help pull your lips up and out, right? So, you know, all of a sudden you're able to like lift up your mouth or close your mouth. So all these muscles are working in tandem. It's like, it's fantastic, amazingly simple network of nerves that trigger muscles that tell muscles to contract or to relax so other muscles can do their job, are constantly in this giant orchestra of contracting and relaxing, and allowing you to do all the things that you do, right? It's pretty amazing, I gotta say. Anyway, the reason I have the front view here is not because of the face, but notice the trapezius shows up here as well, right? So remember, we said it goes from the back of the neck. Well, guess what? It comes and wraps its way around the body, and it also hooks up over here to the clavicle, right? Or the what's the other word for clavicle I'm looking for? Collarbone, right? So more commonly known as the collarbone, right? But the clavicle. So it comes around that front side as well, right? So very big muscle, the trapezius, right? Going back here again, here, let me move these to the side. We look at this and we look at this all in one sheet now. You know, what you want to keep in mind is back of the neck, it's going down the spine, over to the top of the scapula, and then it works its way around the scapula to the clavicle. Mattesi is going to talk a little bit more about this, so that's why I'm not going to go too far into it, but it goes all the way around to that point and therefore allows shrugging, allows your back to come together, right? Like when you do something like rows, talking about exercise, and you do rows, it's going to help you, bring that back together, right? And that's its jobs, right? And every muscle in the body, again, has its own jobs, and it's this orchestral unification that allows all these things to work and make your body work so incredibly well, right? All right, I think that's it for me. I have stuff we're gonna come back to me at the very end that I want to share with you guys as well, but I'm gonna hand this off now to Mrityunjay. He's gonna talk a little bit more about the structure of the trapezius. And then we'll move on to Swenley after that, okay? So all yours, Swenley, when you're ready.
My turn. All right. All right. So thank you, Mike, for that like beautiful insights, on the trapezius muscle and the skeleton overview. All right. So we're gonna start with the structure, right? So I'm gonna present the form to you guys, okay? So Mike talk about the connections of the traps and like things like that, right? How it connects to the scapula and to the collarbone. Now we're gonna rotate the camera, and say what is the structure, right? How the trapezius actually looks in like those, let's say, up quarters view or things like that, so you really see the muscle actually in action, All right. So first of all, let's talk about the traps. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, let's talk about the box of the torso first, right? Because what I'm actually doing here is taking the torso and deconstructing it to simplify it as a box structure. And on top of this, we can actually put this draw the trapezius, right? In like these kind of different perspective. So yeah, we are entering in the form section, okay? So watch this, right? This is like pretty simple, like boxes. Um, I have one more in here. I kind of missing the my layers here. Put this up here. All right. Yeah. So let's get to it. I'm just like confused within some layers here and there. But let's talk about the box of the torso, right? So you can see it's something like this, okay? So you basically have a top plane to it, okay? Top plane, then you have it like a side plane, okay? And yeah, we can talk about, here's like a front plane, like front plane of the torso. Basically what I'm doing is just this, okay? It's this way, right? Pretty simple. It's like it's beginning to end. It's just like one turning edge, right? Here you have the rib cage, okay? Here you have the pelvis, right? Like this. Now remember, you don't want to bend. I'm actually bending the whole box because I'm taking like all the muscles and everything into account. You just want to make sure that the bone structure, which is the rib cage and the pelvis, like don't bend, right? So you treat them as like solid, like wooden blocks, basically. Okay, so something like this. So again, it's just like nothing much to talk about here. It's just like we are taking a torso, deconstructing it, right, and just making the box out of it. Now, how we talk about the structure of the traps here, okay, a little bit. And before this, let's talk about the traps connection. Okay, so here I have a scapula. Okay, here I have the scapula here, and I'm just gonna draw like a pretty simple like traps on top of it. Okay, so let's get into this. I'm gonna take this shorter. Okay. So, and let's say here's a spine. Okay, here's a spine. Here's the basic like rib cage in here. I see the scapula here. This part is important. You see, like this is called the spine of the scapula. This is like where the traps attach. Okay, so it's going like this. You see, like it has like sort of an angle, which is a dynamic angle. It's not like very like straightened out like this, right? It's on a dip, like this way. The traps, this part here, I would say it's like a very important landmark. You would also see this on the body, especially with all the like muscular guys. But even though with skinnier guys too, you can still see that in many people, you know. So this point, pretty important. I would say, let's say this is like blue part here. That's very important. Okay. Now the traps kind of go here, right, into the spine and connects down. Yeah, basically to spine here. Same on the opposite side, you know, for sure. Now the trap comes here and see where it's joining, right? This point as well, you know, this is also like very important. From here, now you can say, yeah, this is basically the a basic landmark, and from here, like the deltoid like starts to come off, okay, like this way. So, and here's a diamond, okay? Here's like the diamond shape, like this way. Now we can talk about the thickness of the muscle, okay, which I really need to cover, like to present the structure of it. So you can basically divide the trapezius in 3 parts, okay? So the first part is right here. This is, I would say, is the first part. This is the second part. You can say it's like something like this. I'm just going to draw the other side as well, so it's not confusing. It's like this. Okay, so that second part, okay, this one. Now this is very thick, okay. Even in general, like with skinnier people as well, this is like a kind of a thick like muscle shape, right? Like this. But again, you know, the more muscular that someone gets, like this becomes like more and more thicker. And this part is skinnier, you know, skinnier than the, or less thicker than the second part, right? This is the third part basically. So yeah, that's a little bit skinnier also. Okay. So, you know, so hopefully you'll get the connections here, right, in the insertion. This part here, right, this diamond, okay, what this diamond forms is the 7 vertebrae, okay, of the spine. So if I draw a spine like really quick in a profile shot, which is like this, you see like the spine has 3 parts to it, which is here 7, 12, and 5, and this is like a tailbone. Okay. Anyway, so you have like 7 cervical vertebrae, right? And the end of this part, which is where the 7th vertebrae ends, this is where the diamond is actually formed. Okay, that's also a pretty good landmark. It's basically, you can call it the base of the neck. Okay, here that's the base of the neck, and then from here, like all the 12 like thoracic things start. So something like this, and here like the rib cage basically connects, right? I'm not gonna talk about that too much, but this is like pretty important landmark. And in some people, you actually see like a bump, you know. So you see like a diamond, and then you see a like a ball, you know. You feel like, oh, there's like a ball or something, right? It's just basically because of spine. Okay, the spine has like these kind of bones, as say like this is a profile shot, which is like this. So this part is actually like poking out, you know, of the skin. All right, so that's some of the traps connection in the front. Obviously, it's with the collarbones, and I'm going to show more of them when we draw the traps in perspective, right? So I had some boxes here. Okay, again, you can see it's like you know, just like simple torso deconstruction. I'm going to bring that in. All right, so let's try to draw traps basically. So what we know. My suggestion for you when you're drawing traps in this kind of perspective, basically have a model of the trap in front of you, like a very simple model of a trap like this, okay? And yeah, it's just like a neutral view, right? Where you might have like all the details and stuff. It's like, oh, here's a diamond, and here's the base of the neck or 7 cervical vertebrae, you know? And oh, this is thicker and whatever, you know? So I have like this. Now we take the help of this, and now we put it into here, okay? So where does it start? It starts from the base of the neck, right here. Now, we know that, oh, this is actually going to attach to the clavicle, which is on the front part of this box, right? The front edge of this box. It comes like this, then it attaches to the side, right? Again, the side is it's basically attaching to the, how do I present that? I'd actually like draw, you know, all of that. So here's the spine, right? Here's the spine of scapula that I kind of drew, you know, very quickly. It attaches right there, okay, at the end of that spine, you know, where it's like start to turn in. So yeah, basically at the end of the box, right? And then from here you can have like all the deltoid and everything, but I'm not going to talk about that today. Maybe some other time. Now we come here, okay. Now see, there's an edge, okay. So here's my top plane, here's my back plane, right? Back plane of the box. There comes a time when this starts to like move towards the back plane, okay. So there's like a pretty big like change, and this will actually make you feel about the thickness of the muscle. Okay, so you really feel like, oh, this is like really, really thick now. Okay, so now I have this landmark, this black landmark right here. I'll turn this as like black. So here, and then you have this this kind of shape, right? What do you can call this kind of leaf-like shape or a force shape, right? Something like this. Now, it's gonna happen the same, obviously, at the other side too, right? We have the side. Here comes the time when it starts like depress at the back plane, and then you have like this kind of shape again, okay, like this way. Now, the only thing I've actually have to got here, yeah, you can attach this, the spine. Oops. You can attach the scapula here and say, oh, here's the scapula, right? And here's the spine of the scapula, you know? And the trap is like attaching to it. Okay, so it's something like this. All right, so now we just have to put the diamond in. So here's the base of the neck, right? We know that, oh, here's like the diamond and like forming. And there we go, you know? So that's trapped. So I'm just gonna quickly tone it in to see like the proper shape of it with red. So it looks like a muscle too. All right, there it is. Right, so there we go. I'm just gonna quickly just make some outlines on top of it. Right, so edge coming down, here's the scapula, here it is. Here's the spine running down, right? And basically here's the base of the skull. You also wanna say that the base of the skull is it gives you a base of the skull, right? So it's a pretty important landmark. Yeah, landmark too, right? It gives you like the base of the skull. And you have like some sternocleidomastoid, right, coming from there on the opposite side. But yeah, so something like this, right? All right, let's quickly talk about some other demos. Okay, so I have some more. Oh, I have one right here as well. Right there, I have one more. So let's talk about this. All right, again, we're gonna start with this, and you can see like I have a like a model of the trap, right, and neutral view. So again, what we're gonna do, this you can see it's a little bit different perspective. So I have this the base of the neck. It's gonna come down, right, attaching to the front edge, to the collarbone. It's gonna come right to the side. I'm just gonna draw like pretty quick scapulas here. Okay, so we have, let's say, scapula right there. We have scapula right there, let's say. Okay, and here's the spine of the scapula on both the ends. All right, so once we get that, now we can come down. Okay, right there. Yeah, so here's that edge, like where it starts to like go towards the back plane. Okay, we have this, right? And then we have this kind of muscle shape to it. Okay. It's pretty simple again. So we go again, it's the front of the scapula, not the front of the scapula, I mean, yeah, on the scapula. It's on the sides. It starts to like go dip in, okay? Right there, here's the spine of the scapula, so it's attaches to this, and it's like forming this, okay? It's gonna do a toning of that pretty quickly. With very little light, right? It's kind of pinkish. It looks more like flesh. Kind of lagging a little bit. Yeah, so there we go. No, so I'm just gonna mark it with black, so it's like pretty clear. Here's the spine, right? Here's the base of the neck. Oh, I actually forget the diamond, so I'm just gonna put that in pretty quickly. Here's the side, here's the collarbone, right? Here's the front, here's the spine again. You know, that part of the scapula is like actually called the spine of scapula. I don't know why they don't name it. They had like these crazy names for like small things, but they don't have a name for this. But yeah, it's called the spine of scapula. So pretty important landmark. And then we had the diamond shape, right? So just here's the base of the neck, right? I know here, oh, here's the base of the neck, so I'm just gonna put the diamond in pretty quickly. do it like this. Okay. And the form wrong, so it's going to be like this. Okay. So that's traps again. Okay. All right. How much time we got? It's almost 4 more minutes. Okay. So let's keep going.
About 3-4 more minutes.
Yeah, let's keep going with some cool demos here. So I have some photographs, and I already like prepared these boxes again. Okay. I'll try to like try to do the traps again. So one of the tricks, I want to share with you is like it becomes so easy when you had like this construction thing going on. Okay, if you try to do like you can still do. Let's say I have a gesture of this person. Okay, like just forces. You can still do it, right? The structure should be in your mind, but it should be somewhere. It should be on your paper. It should be in your mind. But it should be there, right? Because as you see, like the structure is like pretty important for that. All right, let's do the same thing. So here's the base of the skull. Here's the traps coming. It's going to attach to the clavicle. It's going to go to the side. Okay. We have the, let's say, the scapula again. Here's the spine of the scapula right there. So it comes, right, attaches to the spine of the scapula, making this landmark, this kind of, is like a name for it? I don't know. Might be like some of you guys like know what that landmark is actually called. And we have like this shape here. Right? Again, we have the diamond shape. Okay, remember that this is thick. Okay, remember the volume of it. Okay, so here's the traps again. This part is very, very thick, and you can also dissect them in separate parts, just like I did. Like, oh, here's the front part. Here's the first part, which is connecting to the neck, right? Basically, the neck. It's like right, the first part, like a more cylindrical part. Here's that triangle shape in here, which is like the thickest of all. And here's more of a leaner muscle group, right? The third part. All right, so I would say, yeah, that's it, And again, remember the base of the neck is the traps here. Okay, just gonna quickly tone it in. So Anli's gonna cover like I'm basically making the traps. I know like this is more of an action pose where like the traps would contract and stretch, but Swenley's gonna cover that, right? So I'm just taking the perspective of this pose. I'm just taking, yeah, like the inspiration of the perspective here, the pose here, and drawing accordingly, right? Swenley's gonna cover the function of it. All right, so hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned like how to draw some traps and within structure, right? And I hand it over to Swenley now. Thanks for joining that part.
Thanks, Mattesi.
Very welcome.
Hey,
Yeah.
Swanley, let me, I just want to do one quick thing before you jump in.
Yeah, sure.
One thing I just want to mention to all of you that, first of all, to notice is that in order to do what Mattesi was doing, like I was saying before, you don't want to go to anatomy first. You can see he's drawing boxes left and right in perspective all over the place. And that in itself is a pretty big challenge, the ability to draw perspective freehand like that. The other thing he was doing, which is kind of how I taught myself anatomy in general, is, and Swanley's going to go more into the forceful shape of things, but to just understand the shape of a muscle in general, it's like, hey, here's the shape of the traps, right? It's like, okay, so I have the shape of the traps. I've heard people call it the diamond shape, the dagger, whatever works for you. And you have that 7th vertebrae diamond that's there. But understanding that shape, because if you understand that shape as like think of it as like a floor plan or a map, right? This is like a floor plan. And what Mattesi was doing so successfully was saying, well, look, I have a box, and it's like in this perspective, maybe I even have this like twisting and turning box, and I have the spine here. But I can take this and at least then start to put that floor plan, that map, right, into the construction, right? And that's a tricky thing. That is a tricky job to do, to be able to take a shape and morph it. It's almost like if any of you are into 3D, it's like taking a texture map and saying, I'm going to take the texture map and now I'm going to put it on a plane, right, that looks like this. Let's say this is the back, and understand how to do that, right? To be able to do this, I'm being really simple here just for you guys to see, right? How do I take this and put it on this, right? That's how I started. My approach to anatomy was, let me understand what the floor plans are and let me see if I can map them to the forms. But I need to know the forms first, right? Once you know the forms, you can kind of map the anatomy. And then what Matunje was doing is like, hey, but the muscle's round, right? Do I know how to present roundness within that anatomy, right? So now all of a sudden anatomy has thickness. And as he had said, you know, people who work out more, of course, are going to have thicker, rounder muscles than the rest of us skinny older folk, like we were talking about in the chat, right? So just keep that in mind. It's good for you to know like the maps of the anatomy, but you have to understand form well enough to take those maps and kind of place them onto those surfaces as if you were a 3D modeler, okay? And then you're adding form to them and hopefully force to them and all the stuff that Swenley's going to add to this conversation. All right, Swenley, all yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Let's see, let's share the screen. So yeah, the trapezius shape, as some of you mentioned, and I think Mike brought it up as well, it helps to have a very simple shape in mind when it comes to the muscles, you know, and indeed the trapezius shape is pretty similar to a Roman dagger, you know, like same components. You have the handle right here, you know, you have this part, and notice that even the shape of the blade, you know, is quite similar to this. So again, this is like your blueprint or your map that you can start out with. So I'm going to cover, because Mike and Matunje talked about the function and the maps. What I want to do is show that, okay, you've learned the map, the diagram, but as soon as the figure starts moving, you have to keep in mind that those muscles will squash and stretch or contract and relax, like was mentioned at the very beginning. So you cannot, once you start drawing a figure in action, you cannot just slap that, like that static and stiff muscle shape onto the figure. You know, it's not going to look believable. You have to take into consideration how the muscles are working. So how do we go about that? So let's take a look at a real figure. Now, so here is our diagram to the left. This is from the Force Anatomy book, by the way. So whenever I draw the back, especially if I'm going to put in muscles like the trapezius and the deltoids, I tend to draw a simple shoulder blade. You know, whenever I draw a back view, I want to know what the shoulder blade is doing because the trapezius attaches to it. So depending on where the shoulder blade moves or goes, it's going to influence the trapezius muscle. So of course, we know that the shoulder blade attaches to the shoulder joint, like the head of the humerus. So I tend to look for where that is. And I know that the shoulder blade has a socket, you know, into that bone. Usually you can see like the edge of the shoulder blade depending on the model, but in this case, kind of hard to see, I would say, judging from where it is. And if we look at this picture right here, you can see a little bit of the edge of the shoulder blade there. So it would be, it appears that it's somewhere around here. Also, I just simplify it to like a simple triangle, and it has a socket. Now, as Mike mentioned, there is another portion up here, another triangle that is hidden underneath the muscle. Usually we just see like the spine, you know, as Matunje drew also. And this one, again, the shoulder blades can move freely. So it's very important to understand how they work because this arm is being pulled towards the spine. So this shoulder blade is going to be much closer. So I'm trying to see if I can see the edge. I think it would be around here. You know, so we have the sockets, the arm bone, and this shoulder blade would be around here. You know, in general, it's about half the length of the rib cage. Like that's a good guideline to go with. You know, so notice that this is closer to the spine. This arm is stretching, so this is slightly going away from the spine. So I think the edge might even be a bit farther, maybe around here. So why is this important? Because again, the muscles are working, you know, they contract, so they squash and stretch. So let's draw this muscle shape right here, but with the action in mind. So how is the muscle working? You know, and that's where we want to get to, functional anatomy. So let's start here. Like around here would be the base of the cranium where this attaches. You know, so this part is pretty similar to the diagram. You know, so this is still pretty relaxed. So here the arm is going back and it's going up. So here, as you can see, this is very squashed. You know, like this is contracting and it's getting bulkier. You know, and notice that this side, again, because of the action, this is being stretched. Now, so the shape is a bit more like lean and stretched. You know, so this already, again, starts adding believability to your anatomy drawings. That's why it's so important to understand function first and not just go and slap, again, the stiff diagram shape onto the model. It's not going to look believable. Now, so we have this part. This goes over the spine, like Mitunjay showed earlier. Now, then this goes and attaches around here. And then we have this side. Again, this is squashed. And then this goes down. No, and notice that I'm designing the shapes. It would be very easy again to draw a symmetrical shape as in the diagram. And given his back is pretty much turned towards us, but seeing that we see the side plane here, his back is slightly facing this way. So I would want to use the lines to show that. So I'm going to curve his back slightly towards this side, you know, clarify it in the drawing. And the shape also, I want this like bottom part of the triangle to be pointing this way, you know, to reinforce that direction. So again, in a back view, the bottom part is like the blade of the dagger, right? Pretty much symmetrical. But as soon as it turns in perspective, you're going to have this triangle point you one way or the other. You know, so this gives us a sense of direction. And notice that this is a force shape. You know, we have a clear force curve here, and this is the straighter side. Same here. You know, so you want to watch out for the symmetry once you have the forms in a 3/4 view. You know, so squash here. You know, this contracting, bring the arm up and in. You know, form-wise, this would also be like bulkier, you know, because again, this is moving closer to the spine, so it's squashing this side of the muscle as well. And this side is a bit more relaxed in comparison, you know, so not as bulky. And again, we can see it here in the reference, like notice how much bulk and definition we have here. And here you can see the muscle is quite lean and it's quite flat, you know, compared to the other side. So that is one. Let's take a look at another one here. Go through a new layer. So let's look at this one. Again, we need to understand the shoulder blades because now, because of the action, both shoulder blades are getting pushed towards the spine, you know, and that's why we see all the squashing and wrinkling of the skin. So again, kind of hard to see the edges in here. So I usually go from, you know, where are the shoulder joints? I know that the shoulder blades attaches to the upper arm bone. So I use that to help me kind of like estimate where it would be. Now here we can see it a little bit. We can see the landmarks, you know, caused by the edge of the shoulder blade. Now, so that would be around here. Now again, notice pretty close to the spine, right? Arms are bringing the shoulder blades in. So let's see, it's the base of the cranium. By the way, the base of the cranium tends to line up with the base of the nose and the base of the ear. So that's an easy way to find it. Now we start with this upper portion of the shape. And then let's see, this is relatively contracted. So again, notice the force shape like this right here is a shape, a triangle. Then we have this triangle right here, and because of you're like bring your shoulder blades together, this is squashing. Like the shape is pretty similar to the diagram, but it's more about the volume. Again, notice how much like volume we can see here, and same on the other side. So that would be a good way to show what's going on. And here, this would go over and go down. Same here. And again, I'm pointing that triangle in the direction of the form. I'm not just slapping a symmetrical shape on there. It's not going to work in clarifying what the form is doing. So again, this would be more about form, to really show what's going on, show all the like squashing of the muscles together towards the spine. And you can subtly see the diamond shape in here as well. If you look at the reference, it would be here. And even in drawing the diamond shape, again, notice the triangles. This triangle is pointing up, and here I want to reverse the triangle to work with the form. It has to like go over that roundness of the muscle. So this one is going this way, this one is going that way. I'm not just slapping a stiff and symmetrical diamond shape because it's a 3/4 view, so I have to use line to show the direction of the form. All right, last but not least, once you learn the characteristic shape of the muscle, then it's very easy to play with the design. So let's say you have 3 different characters. You can start like squashing and stretching the shape of the muscle itself as a whole to fit the design of the character. And this is another reason to know the characteristic shape of the muscle, because the shape has to do with its function. The shape is because of the job that the muscle has to do. So you can exaggerate it, and that you went too far once you lost the characteristic shape of the muscle that you're dealing with, because then the muscle cannot do its job anymore. So I see it's almost time. Hopefully this helped you guys with some insights on the trapezius muscle, and I'm going to give it over to Mike.
Mike, you're muted.
Thank you, Swanley, for your part. I grabbed a drawing of mine off of one of the models that Mattesi was showing, just to show you how this all starts to come together, right? So you can see here's the trapezius. I'm aware of the shape of it. It's being aware of the form of it. That the scapula are in there, as we talked about today, right? Where the spine is. And getting some form in there. You can see these small sort of dashed form lines to make sure that not only does the muscle feel structured, but it's sitting on the box that Mattesi drew, right, of the entire torso, like bending away in space, right? So this is finally what it looks like when everything starts coming, together. If you follow my Instagram account, which is just my name, you'll see that I've posted over the last week a couple of drawings there by one of my mentees, a guy named Jimmy, who's doing anatomy right now. And you can see there how important shape is, because he's color coding all the different shapes of the upper body to, to represent the separations of the different muscles. So it's all the stuff that, we shared with you here today. Last but not least, I had a fun little thing I wanted to show with you that another mentee named Richard sent in. Richard is actually a 3D animator out in the entertainment industry. He's worked at some of the major studios. And he sent this in one week, which I thought was really cool. He was learning anatomy from me, and he's a 3D animator, so he loves taking the opportunity to try and learn 2D animation as well. And he came in with this, right? So he he took video of himself and actually went in and animated his traps compressing, right? So you can see this is also an excellent example of all the different things we've talked about today, except here it is in action, right? So Richard had to take it upon himself to be aware of the shape change the muscles go through, you know, where they're connected, how they work, to pull off an animation like this, right? Which I think is really amazing. It's like another reason that animation is so great is not only the drawing skill it takes to pull it off, but, you know, the clarity that time gives you in showing the function of something, right? It's one thing to draw, to try to do a force figure drawing and try to capture that energy and try to show the muscles working. But man, when you're animating, which is how our world really works, right? We see things in motion all the time because of time. You really get to observe how this all works, right? So such a fun exercise. Again, before you animate, you need to learn how to draw force. You need to know how to draw form. You need to know how to draw shapes and perspective, and then draw from imagination, and then actually start learning how to animate itself, which is its own skill, right? So, so that's it. Thank you, Swenley and Ritunjay, for today's session and all your awesome input. I hope you guys enjoyed, out in the audience, you guys enjoyed our talk on an overview of anatomy. I would say in closing, again, I want you to keep in mind the simplicity of the human skeleton, that muscles contract, and the reason they contract is because they connect from one bone to another, and that happens over a joint, and it's that contraction that brings bones together. It's what lets you move. It's, again, what's allowing my hands to move. It's what allows your legs to run, is this idea of contraction, and how there's opposing contractions that help these things move in different directions. We're going to talk about that a little more next week. So if you enjoy what we're doing here on this channel, then please hit the subscribe button. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of the Force Fridays, so you're here live where you can ask us questions, then hit the bell, all right, so you get notified about our next session. Otherwise, we will see you all next Friday. Have a happy and safe weekend and next week, and we will see you in 7 days. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Take care, and we will see you. I will see you in a week. Bye-bye.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.